Well, former Q&A host Tony Jones has just released a new documentary that looks at animal testing in medical research and striking the balance between animal rights and possibly saving millions of lives.
Most of us, we love animals. There's a part of us that doesn't want this to be true.
We have had this relationship with macaques for millennia. There is no doubt in my mind that these animals are sentient.
People need to know when monkeys are used in research, this is what it looks like. And are you comfortable with that or not?
Well, to find out more about it, I spoke with Tony Jones a little earlier this afternoon. Tony, welcome to McKnight Tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Robert. It's great to be here.
Now, Tony, the biggest question, is it sentient or sentient?
Well, if you're an American, it's sentient. And if you're Australian or British, it's sentient.
Okay.
So we're going to say sentient and stick with that. But as you've seen, one of our key characters in the film, Dr. Lisa Jones Engel, whose narrative we follow through the course of the film, she says sentient.
Yes, indeed. Look, the doco, I think, does a great job talking about the balance between animal testing on primates and saving lives. And it is something even scientists struggle with. We see that in the documentary, don't we?
Yeah, it's amazing. In fact, it's one of the most surprising things we discovered when we were doing research for this. And that is that the people who do the work, many of them anyway, the people who do the work of experimenting on animals, testing on animals, they develop very close bonds with the animals they test on, particularly when it comes to the macaques, that is to say, the little monkeys who replaced chimpanzees as the top level of the testing regime. So they are like little humans. They're like children in many respects. And people develop bonds with them, then they have to kill them at the end of their research process. That is known in psychology as the care-kill paradox. You care for the animal and ultimately you kill the animal. But it's a kind of terrible, it has terrible consequences for many of these people. They suffer from PTSD, they suffer from depression, they suffer the consequences of what they're doing. They feel guilt, among other things. And we discovered this through an article in Science magazine called Suffering in Silence, which wasn't about the animals, but about the people who were doing the experimentation. We found within that article a bunch of people, and we ended up interviewing all of them. So everyone in our film worked in animal testing or research at some point in their lives or still work in the field.
And the level of access you get is fascinating because the scientists literally say, I believe in animal research, but just if you want to have the conversation, come in and have a look at how we do it. And, you know, the point is made, they live in cages, they don't have the freedoms that they have. But of course, the balance is the lives you save.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. There's a woman who is a sort of, I guess she's a kind of, she's a spruiker for the biomedical industry. She now actually works, weirdly enough, in the University of Washington Primate Center, where we were invited in to film the work that they do. She says at one point, and she's speaking to the sort of people who are doing the testing, she says, you are the reason that a 6-year-old with leukemia gets to be 7. You are your heroes. And of course, that sounds absolutely fine on the surface. And it's absolutely true that nearly all the medicines we have come through this method, ultimately tested on animals. And the ultimate animal is the monkey. But if you think about the facts around it, it's a very flawed process because 90 to 95% of the drugs that test safe on animals and successful on animals fail in human testing. So what we really get is 5% of those successfully tested on animals make it to market and become important drugs that we use. And I use drugs like just about everybody. I have diabetes too, and there are lots of drugs that I take for that have been tested on animals. So I don't have a kind of activist view on this. I don't not take vaccines or anything like that. Of course, I take vaccines, only sensible to do so. But the thing is, there is a better way to do it. And we do get to that by the end of the film. We see the new technology that's coming through very quickly that will ultimately replace animal testing and be much more successful in terms of the rate of success for the drugs that are tested.
And of course, that's a technological advancement. And look, the film is called Sentient. It points out the intelligence levels of these animals that are researched on. Chimpanzees, well, I think it was 2015, they stopped using chimps in the US, but they're still using other intelligent animals. Just how intelligent are they?
Oh, I mean, they're extraordinary. They are very human-like. I mean, in the case of chimpanzees, they're evidence that they are able to learn rudimentary forms of language. There are all sorts of things about them. One of the things that we look at in the film closely is the relationship between the mother animals and their infants. It becomes a very interesting theme in the film because we trace the course of the life of a scientist, Lisa Jones Engel, from the time she enters the field, believe it or not, at the age of 17, working in the jungles of Borneo with orangutans and macaque monkeys, all the way through to working in a facility that experiments on chimpanzees back in the early 2000s, and then to her work in the field with monkeys. She gets to a point, and this happens, by the way, when she's working with the chimpanzees, but also later when she's working with monkeys, she gets to a point where she decides she can't do it anymore because she realizes what's happening is, in almost every case, you are separating the infants from the mothers and putting them in separate places. And that to her becomes intolerable. She can't do it anymore. So she now has transformed herself into an activist, a genuine scientist and an activist who's trying to close down the research facility that we film in, the University of Washington Primate Center, the ones that invited us through the front door. We spent a lot of time following the arc of her story to the point where she decides, I can't do it anymore. I'm going to now work to close down the place where I worked for, 15 years.
I talked about the technology, you've talked about it, but there is an example in the doco where a scientist talks about the research done during the AIDS virus. He points out that the experimentation on a few chimpanzees, science possibly saved millions of lives. That's a pretty powerful statement, isn't it, when we look back historically on what was being done?
Well, it's interesting. He wanted to do that. He went in. He's a gay man, a scientist, actually a very close friend of Lisa Jones Engel, whose life story we follow. They worked together with the chimpanzees. He went in because he's a gay man, and many of his friends were coming down with AIDS and dying of AIDS in that terrible period where there were no medications to treat it. And what he was trying to do, what they were trying to create in the LEMSIP laboratory, was a vaccine against AIDS, and it failed. They didn't manage to do it. Now, ultimately, through other methods in other places, they found medicines by using animal research, which are used to treat AIDS, to treat the symptoms, but they never found a cure. They never found a vaccine. That's what he worked on for a very good part of his life, and the chimpanzees were sacrificed in order to produce a vaccine, but it never happened.
Now, I want to show a piece that you use in the documentary. It's a bit of archival footage, and I hope you and your team don't mind that I took it from my preview copy of the doco, but it's where the well-respected...
I'm not going to complain.
Good. It's where the well-respected scientist James Mahoney, he was asked about the use of chimps in his research in this archival interview. I want to have a look at that. Let's take a look.
Yeah.
Because of the enormous similarity between the great apes and human beings, do we have a right to use them in this way?
I personally don't think we have a right. No, I am thoroughly convinced that we do not have a right. I can only say that we have a need. Give me that little hand.
Do you ever feel bad about it and wish you were doing something else?
Yes, every day, every night. Unfortunately, we do need to use them in research. That's my belief. But I'm not so thoroughly convinced about my rightness in doing so that I feel I can do it without having a terrible conscience.
Tony, I think what this film shows...
It's the kind of ethical dilemma, isn't it? Right there, all stated rather brilliantly back in the 1960s.
Yeah, but it also shows these scientists aren't evil. And I think sometimes animal activists try to paint these scientists as evil. Now, he obviously, I mean, the moment I saw that, and it's near the beginning of the film and later on in the film, you tease it a little bit. It just really spoke to me, because here is a man doing what he thinks is right for the greater good that goes against his own moral compass. It just spoke to me.
Yeah, and it's like I said earlier, it is essentially one of the great themes of our film. We wanted to express empathy in the film, a quality, not widely seen throughout the world these days. But we wanted to be empathetic to the animals, but also to the people who are doing the work, because, as you say, they're not monsters. Quite the contrary. They're people with very high ideals in many cases. People like Mahoney. And Mahoney, however, as he got older and began to look back on his career, he kind of changed his mind. He decided he was wrong in the end to have done this. He didn't think the benefits they were actually getting were powerful enough to justify what they were doing to the chimpanzees. You probably know that in 2015, I think you even mentioned it, in 2015, chimpanzees, largely due to the work of Jane Goodall, were taken out of laboratory settings. No, you're no longer able to do that work on chimpanzees, at least not in the United States. We don't know what happens in countries like China or India. We haven't got a kind of compass on it because there's no transparency. But we know that in the United States and Australia and across Europe, chimpanzees were effectively banned from being used as experimental animals. What happened after that is they doubled down on the next closest animal. That's the macaque monkey. And the really shocking thing is the kind of animal industrial complex that's been set up over the years to actually make that happen. So we see, for example, right from the moment where these little animals are taken out of forests by hunters, they're then put into these giant, almost concentration camp-like breeding farms. And ultimately, you're supposed to send the next generation onto the laboratories and the testing laboratories. That is where I think
sort of feels like it just moved the problem.
People are shocked to see that, and they don't realize what an incredible industry it is. As I said, an animal industrial complex. It's worth billions and billions of dollars. Massive investments have gone into this. So these little animals bred in these breeding farms in Southeast Asia are put in little coffin-like containers and transported 30 or 40 hours to the laboratories around the world. And we see that process. We see what happens from the beginning inside the giant breeding farms, to the loading of them onto aeroplanes, to the landing of them in third countries, in Western countries for the most part, where they're taken into the laboratories. And one of the opening scenes of our film that has caused a lot of comment, I must say, is they open up these coffin-like containers and start pulling the monkeys out. And right at the beginning of our film, we see them do that, and they lose a handle on one of the monkeys, and it jumps away, and it starts leaping around this laboratory setting, jumping over the heads of the people who are trying to catch it. And it's almost comic, except that it isn't. It's kind of terrifying, because when they catch the monkey and they mark up its belly with a special color, and then they put it into the system, you know that its life from then on is going to be constantly being poisoned in a testing laboratory and to its death. So it's a weird thing. And inside, there's a lot of the footage in our film has been secretly filmed inside testing laboratories. That, I suppose, is the most confronting part of our film, though we desperately tried not to scare away audiences by confronting them with horrors. What we do see
feel gratuitous.
It isn't. I hope it isn't. We work very hard to make sure that it wasn't, because we want a lot of people to come and see this. And what will happen is, rather than be horrified by gore and terrible things, I think what will happen is you'll feel compassion for the animals and for the people, like I said, who are doing the work with the animals. And you see them, you hear them talking, and it is like they're dealing with little children. And these animals, these monkeys, you see them terrified out of their wits when th're first introduced into these testing laboratories, and they're holding each other, and they look exactly like a group of little children captured in some way, living in terror, holding each other for comfort. It's quite moving, I think. And I think that the thing the film will do is capture your emotions rather than horrify you.
Yeah, I agree. Look, your wife, ABC 7:30 presenter Sarah Ferguson, she was the executive producer of Sentient. You guys have been married for over 3 decades. I've interviewed her for TV Black Box. She's a fantastic interview. But you clearly understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. How did this play out in your specific roles? Were there moments during the filmmaking where her input led to you doing something differently, or was there a bit of Barney? How did it go?
She didn't have a lot of input in the actual filming or editing of the film. So she's there as an executive producer because she was there at the point where we came up with the idea of doing this. And the film it probably wouldn't exist without Sarah, but she doesn't actually have any role in the editing of the film or the filming of it. She was doing her own job for the ABC at that time. So, but she saw final cuts of the film and gave her advice, but so did a lot of people. But it's because of her initial role in making sure this actually happened that we gave her a deserved executive producer credit.
Fair enough. Look, before I let you go, you've been a broadcaster for many years. Your baby, QandA, no longer exists. How do you feel about that?
I do feel quite sad about it sometimes. We're reflecting quite recently the whole kind of madness about Gina Reinhardt coming out. And I do remember Barry Humphries on the program making jokes about Gina Reinhardt, going back to, in fact, one of our funniest programs where we had a group of actors and comedians and Barry Humphries at the centre of it. It was one of our most watched programs. But I just recall now that he was quite funny when it came to the issue of Gina Reinhardt. We won't go into the details of what he said, but you can go back and look at it if you want to. But look, I'm very sad that the program no longer exists. One hopes the ABC will come up with some adequate replacement for it. It was a groundbreaking program. It connected audiences to social media. It became like almost like a live sporting event on a Monday night. And we would have reviews of the program the following day, just like you would have reviews of an AFL match or a rugby league match or a rugby union match the following day. It was kind of wonderful. And it had its moment. I rode that moment for 10 years and I very happily left in order to actually go and do something else. But the program hasn't survived. The period of COVID was very difficult for it, I think. It hasn't survived.
No. I don't think it was COVID, and that's very generous of you. I think different people come in and don't look at what's working. I mean, you had situations where they stopped using Twitter feedback, which was a core of what the show did. And I think you had a magnificent balance. And look, I'm not here to can anyone, and people do their own thing. But I think you and your team at the time understood the show and knew how to get the most from it. And especially with the way, I'll take that as a comment, your famous quote from it. I don't think underplayed what you did with that show. And I just don't think other people knew how to ride the horse the way you did, to use that analogy.
Well, Robert, that is literally the perfect moment to say, I'll take that as a comment.
And on that note, I will thank you very much. Where can we watch Sentient?
Okay, we're actually going to be in Brisbane. Well, I think you're in Brisbane, aren't you? We're going to be in Brisbane this Friday and Saturday.
But I'm on the Gold Coast, so yes,
you are. But around the country, we're going to have screenings all over the place, usually in quite small cinemas. But from August 27, there's going to be national screenings, and people need to go on the website of Madman Films, who are our distributor in Australia, to have a look at where they can see it, or go into your local cinema and have a look and see whether we're on the list. We'll try and get out some more publicity, literally about where we are and when we're there. But we will be around the country. So in Hobart, in Brisbane, in Adelaide, we hope over in Perth, but many other parts of the country. And I'm right here in Canberra at the moment, believe it or not, because we've got screenings tonight and tomorrow. These are previews ahead of the big release. But I'm going to do follow the film around, including in Brisbane this weekend. Follow the film around and introduce it, and do Q&As at the end, talking about some of the things that we've been talking about in this podcast.
Well, if you're in Brisbane, Google it very quickly, but go to Mad Men Entertainment and then you'll find some more details. Tony, it has been fantastic getting to have a conversation with you. Congratulations on the film. It's brilliant. Appreciate you joining us on McKnight Tonight.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Robert.